What's up, guys? Rob Ferretti here, bad haircut and all, and behind me we've got the Lamborghini. So there's only three cars. So the Range Rover's gone out, the Lambo's gone out, and the C8 has gone out. Those are the only three cars that I've had sort of consistently, or even not even consistently, but going out during the pandemic. Now the Lamborghini, obviously, because it's super fun, the Corvette because it's super new, and then the Range Rover was just a guy who needed to move people and wanted to get out of Dodge because they've been under quarantine for so long. So let's look at this car. A lot of people, they always start to question like rental cars. Hey, like rental cars, they're all beat up. Everybody does this, everybody does that. Well, that's not really the case, right? I can tell generally by a customer, and not by like just stereotyping the customer or just assuming he did something. I can sort of tell how a customer drives a car from the GPS logs and then how much gas they burn. Because a lot of the time that we have a car, it goes out, we give people a full tank of gas, and we include that first tank of gas in the rental price. So they've got no obligation to fill it up. They're not filling it up, whether they put 6 gallons in or 16 gallons in. They don't have to. I fill it up. But when I do that, I can see the fuel economy they got, right? So I can see that, like this car went out recently, and I was looking, and the guy rented it for 1 day, and he did 120 miles. And I was like, oh, okay, I look on the GPS, and there's a bunch of speed alerts. Now, the GPS is not something, I don't generally look on the GPS. I just look when, like, the truck is going to pick up the car to make sure the car is where it's supposed to be so the truck isn't wasting his time. We've had that in the past where we're supposed to pick up a car and the guy's 6 hours away. I'm like, don't leave yet because the guy's 6 hours away. You're going to be sitting on the side of the street waiting for him. And this car surprised me a little bit because I looked and it had 150 speed, not speed alerts, but like rapid accelerations. Now, to be fair, with the sports cars and the GPS platform, a rapid acceleration is easier to achieve, right? Because it just, wow, that car went very quickly. It's not percentage of throttle, it's just the GPS reading that the car went from this speed to this speed fairly quickly. Now, this car had 150 and then it had 100 braking instances. Now, this was on the first like 4 hours the guy had the car. I'm like, all right, now I'm looking. You can see on the map, you see all the lightning bolts, you see all the exclamation points. That you could tell somebody's really driving the car. Now, it's usually before somebody takes the car, if they start asking about the tires or the certain things like that, you're like, all right, this guy you got to sort of watch out for. I've actually turned down a customer because a customer wanted to take the traction control off. And I'm like, I'm sorry, we've disabled that. You can't take the traction control off. Well, I can't fully enjoy the car if I can't take traction control off. If you need to take traction control off to enjoy the car, I don't want to rent to you. Because either your ego is way too big and you're going to crash the car, which is very possible, and most people that take traction control off ultimately lose control because they're like, check this out, this is cool. And in their head, they're doing like this awesome power slide around the corner, and in actuality, boom, excuse me, they're in a tree. So that's something I've noticed. If people ask about the tires, it's generally a dead giveaway that they're going to be looking to push the car. What type of tires are on the car, stuff like that. And if it was something where it's like in the rain and they're asking if there's all seasons, or if it's going to snow, they're asking if they're all season or cup tires or something like that, different story, that's just car guy. But if a guy on a nice day waits for a nice day, this guy, one of these guys was, that the guy who I suspected is driving this very quickly, called me to rent the car earlier in the week, and then didn't say he's going to take the car until like 7 in the morning, the morning of. And I'm like, well, we got to deliver the car. Why didn't you just tell me yesterday? The weather forecast isn't going to change in 12 hours. And it was going to be a gorgeous day. Why don't you just tell me the day before so we can plan? Fast forward, he gets the car, and the top speed on this car, on what this guy did. Now, the GPS gives you pings, right? So the GPS will do snapshots every minute. So I can see, like, get an idea of how fast he goes. But I didn't know just how fast he went until I went into the car and checked the trip. Boom. 181 miles an hour. That's moving. Now, this car's got a top speed of over 200. But for a renter who you would assume isn't familiar with the car, having it for a day, I usually wouldn't take a car I've been in for a couple hours and bring it up to almost 200 miles an hour. Unless the conditions were perfect. And I'll tell you what, I don't think there's many places around New York and New Jersey where the conditions are perfect for that. So this guy did about 125 miles on the car, and when we were speaking to him, we're like, oh, hey, you've only got 30 miles to empty. In a Lamborghini, 30 miles to empty is like empty. So like, wow, you really went through the tank of gas. And he's like, oh, no, I had to put gas in it this morning to go to my brother. That means he went through an entire tank of gas on a Lamborghini in like 100 miles, which is not. I mean, it's 20 gallon, at least a 20-gallon tank. You're talking 5 miles to the gallon. This guy is keeping that thing sort of 2 or 3 gears below where it should be at all times, and definitely romping on it every opportunity. Now, again, am I angry? No, the guy rented a Lamborghini. That's not our typical customer, but the car came back, not a scratch on it, no damage, and it's sort of built and designed to do that. That's really between him and the cops. And it just, you look at the car, you have no idea. Like, there's people that go out and drive their cars and do 210, 215, and the cars don't explode. That's the whole point of a high-performance car. There's always a time and a place. Like if it was out in Montana or something, I would expect to see, and that's probably why I don't see speeds like that usually. I think the highest I've seen previously in my 17 years was probably in the 150s on the trip odometers, but 181 is now a new record. Does it really bother me? Again, no. Anyone that's looked at any of my rental cars in Europe when I'm on the Autobahn, I'm maxing every car out. I'm at 290 kilometers an hour or whatever I can possibly do in that car. I'm out there doing it. That's a legal setting versus this, which would be an illegal setting. Most of our cars, when we check trip odometers, which is very infrequently, will be like long-term 115, 108, 110, something like that. But in a car like this, that's third gear. Like if you go through third gear, and then usually people back off. I've done data logging in the past, and the one thing I learned by data logging for a month is that we don't have to data log because most people, and it's evidenced by the fact that we're slow right now, most people aren't here for the empty highways, for the enjoyment of the car. Most people rent these things as an accessory. There's no restaurants right now, there's no social scene, that's why people, they rent it to go to the Hamptons and drive around, go to dinner, pull up to the restaurant, go to a club, go to a social function, a barbecue. That's why these cars exist as rental cars, not for the people that like enjoy driving or are looking to push the car. So it happens. You know, every once in a while you get a guy who goes fast. Very rare, but I figured that's something that, how do you know if somebody goes fast? You can't just assume, but using these different things, using the GPS, using how much fuel consumption they did, and then questions that they ask, and then obviously ultimately the trip, the data logging equipment in the car, you're able to tell just what somebody did with the car. And obviously it's not really a common thing that we deal with, but something that's noteworthy. So Rob Ferretti, thank you for watching. Be safe out there. Don't do what this guy did. And I don't even, to be fair, that trip odometer could have been a different rental. It's unlikely, but it could have been because that trip odometer hasn't been reset in about like 1,900 miles. So all I know is the guy enjoyed it. Car came back in one piece, and we move on to the next day. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow. So you guys are familiar with my other company, Adventure Drives, right? Well, this year we've got 2 trips coming up. One which is starting in Seattle and ending in Jackson Hole in July. That's going up through the Canadian Rockies, coming down through Banff, Yellowstone, Glacier National Park, and Grand Teton National Park. It's going to be phenomenal. Also, we're going to be going to Scotland in October. We're going to be doing Scotch distilleries, playing golf at St. Andrews if you want to do that, walking around, seeing lakes, waterfalls, driving the North Coast. It's going to be an amazing trip. Prices start as low as $2,500 per person for the shorter trip in Scotland, about double that for the longer trip in July. If you're interested in going, check out the link in the description.